Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Rebekah Avery. I am a PhD coach for the PhD community, for Dr. Barry's community. Before we get started, so let's go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button so that you'll be notified every time that we go live over here. And today we are going to be talking mostly about hunting and regenerative farming and the importance of these two, kind of putting the hunter back in hunter-gatherer in our society. So without further ado, my first guest that I'm going to bring on is Britton White. He is the host of MDE Outdoors, and he has been one of my longtime friends for about 34 years. So we grew up together. So without further ado, here's Britton White. Hey, Britton, how you doing?
What's going on? How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad that you agreed to be on our show. So what I want from you is I want you to tell everybody sort of who you are and how MDE sort of got started and what it's doing.
All right. Well, as Rebekah told you, I'm Britton White. I host and own MDE Outdoors. We are a outdoor hunting and fishing show located in Central Virginia. We air on Carbon TV, Hunt Channel, soon to be on Outdoor Action Network. And as Rebekah also told you, apparently I'm pretty old because she's known me for 34 years. So, and plus you can see the gray hair. MDE really started on the back seat, or not on the back seat, on the tailgate of a truck. And I might get a little bit of emotional here. The idea came about with a good friend of mine, John Miller, who recently passed away back in November. And he and I came up with the idea sitting on the truck bed in between morning and afternoon hunt one day, and it didn't really take off. He had things going on. I had a lot of things going on outside of there. Things just really didn't take off. You fast forward to 2014, and because this was in 2012, so in 2014, I told now my wife Jessica, I told her, I said, "Hey, I want to kick it back up and start and see what happens." And buddy of mine from church is like, "Hey, I want to help. I'm down. Let's do it." And we just started. We had no clue what we were doing. We kind of had an idea as to what we were doing, but we really didn't have an idea. Made some phone calls to some companies in the outdoor industry, asked them if they'd back us, let us use your products. We'll promote them a little bit, see what we can do. And it's 10 years later, here we are.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So I'm going to bring on our second guest so that we can get you all talking together both about like what's going on in all this with hunting and with regenerative farming. So without further ado, this is Dr. Ken Berry. Hi, thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So you briefly met Britton, and you guys have similar ideas about like hunting and regenerative farming and knowing where your food comes from. So sort of, Dr. Berry, talked to us about what you were doing with your regenerative farming.
So we inherited a little over 40 acres a few years back, and this 40 acres had been monocropped just the classical way for decades. And so we had a lot of dirt on this farm, but not much soil. And so we really want to have cattle, but right now there's just no way, because after just a small rainstorm, if we had heavy cattle on this land, they would be up to their knees in mud and they wouldn't be able to climb the hill. They'd be sliding down the hill on a mudslide. And so I adopted instead to get sheep. And so I have St. Croix sheep, Barbados, and Katahdin, and we're rotating them around the property as I clear out the woods, which were basically a deciduous rainforest. I mean, the briars and the bushes are so thick that there's no sunlight for grass at all. And so I'm acre by acre clearing out the undergrowth and thinning the taller canopy trees and planting orchard grass. And there's a lot of seeds, grass seeds in the seed bank. But I'm trying to kind of move it along a little bit by sowing some clover and some orchard grass and other varieties. And so we have about 60 head now, and I don't take the rams out like a lot of people do so that they only have spring lambs. I'm letting them do what they want to do right now. And currently what they want to do is have all their lambs in the dead of winter. And last year I'm like, oh crap, because it was 5 below here in Tennessee and all the ewes were dropping their lambs. But they all lived and they all did great. And they're all very vigorous, some of the more vigorous ones in the flock now. And so I'm like, well, okay, I'll leave them in again and see if that works. And again, they dropped all their lambs right in the middle of February, pretty close to Imbolc. That's weird how there's a time of the year named after the goats and the sheep dropping their babies. And they're all, again, doing very well. Had a very cold, snowy second, and that's exactly when they dropped them all. They're all doing fine. So I might take the rams out next year. I might not, but I'm using these sheep to obviously make meat and to make more sheep, but I'm also using them to rebuild the soil because as they and the other good thing about sheep versus cattle on our farm is that sheep are a lot like goats in that they love weeds and also they love tree leaves. And so when I cut down a tulip poplar, I'm not killing that tree, right? Because 6 months later, here's all this new growth coming up from the stump, and the sheep wear that new growth out. They love those fresh leaves that are coming from the new growth. And so all of the junk trees, meaning trees that don't serve a purpose, as they resprout, the sheep wear that out and they turn those tree leaves into sheep meat, which I'm very happy about. We also have chickens and turkey, and eventually we'll have some cattle, but right now we just don't have the soil to support it.
Yeah. So, Britton, with what he's talking about, like with being selective on like even just how you're rotating, talk to us about like the selectivity of like how you got of hunting, like hunting the deer and what to choose and things of that nature.
Well, I guess you could break it down. You have there's two communities when it comes to hunting. You have your trophy hunters and then you have your meat hunters. Mm-hmm. Trophy hunters, really, they go out, they're wanting to shoot the biggest deer they can possibly shoot. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? I mean, in all honesty, they put the time in, they're putting in food plots, their minerals, they got trail cameras, they're monitoring everything that they can monitor. They're trying to get this one particular deer nailed down to one point in time where they can shoot it. Doing that it's good deer management doing that because you let the bigger deer grow, the more mature deer grow. If that's your thing, that's great. You do have to manage your herd when you do that. You do have to take out a few does. Some people call them cull bucks that don't really grow properly, or they get injured and they don't grow, properly throughout their life. Some people take those out. Some people let them go. It's just, it's kind of a toss up. And on the other side, you got the meat hunters who shoot whatever. Less selective, I guess you could say. They're shooting the 1.5 to 3.5-year-old bucks. I mean, I've done it. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I still don't do it. For me personally, I'm going to shoot a bigger, mature doe and, let the spikes and 3s and 4s kind of walk. Yeah, I shot a couple smaller bucks this year, but I got excited and I shot them. And I'm one of these people that if my heart gets to racing and I get excited, I'm going to shoot, I do have a little bit of restraint, a lot of, most of the time. But when you have a family like we do, there's me and Jess and then 3 younger kids, 2 older kids are off in college right now. We're trying to put as much meat in the freezer as we can during hunting season. She's allowed 6 deer a year. I'm allowed 6 deer a year. We can buy extra tags if we need to. So we're a little selective. Jess, not so much as me, although she killed the bigger buck this year than what I did. And probably she's got one bigger than anything I've ever got on the wall out there this year. So I'm proud of her for that. But like I said, it really boils down to what you want to do. If you're going out there specifically to hunt meat, you want to try to shoot the biggest deer possible. And if that means, you shoot a bunch of does, great. A little bucks walk, great. But if you're you just want to go out and shoot whatever, that's the way it works. Like I said, trophy hunting side, they're a little bit more selective on things. They do take does because they want to manage that deer herd. They want a good buck to doe ratio. And when it comes to managing a deer herd, you don't want an overpopulated bunch of deer, because then there's nutrition, there's healthy deer herd, and a lot of these urban areas around here in Virginia, like DC area, Richmond area, Chesterfield, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, those areas have an abundance of deer. And during urban archery season, we can go in and shoot does. There's an urban early season in September to October, and then there's a late season that runs from the end of deer season through about mid-March, sometimes up into April, where you're taking out does, because these are such overpopulated areas that deer herds are not necessarily unhealthy, but taking these does out and more deer out will make the deer herd a little bit more healthier for you.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Me and you, Britton, we grew up in backwoods of West Virginia, and hunting was a staple. Like, this is how people got their food. And it was, if you weren't hunting, you were fishing. Yeah. And so to us, it's nothing, to hear that our families are out, getting meat to put in the freezers. But it's important also that people know where their food's coming from. And
right, it really is.
And hunting, where it's coming from. You're making friends with your butchers, and you're making friends with your ranchers. So, and I know that that's a goal of yours, Dr. Berry, but you don't talk a lot in the community about hunting though. Like, I've heard you talk about farming, but not a lot about hunting.
Yeah. And there's several reasons for that. We're all a hunting family. We all grew up in Tennessee. Nisha is currently is much more of a hunter than I am. And she's a meat hunter, Britton. Whereas her dad, Pedro, who everybody calls Poppy, he's a trophy hunter. And so Nisha, and I would be interested. You said your wife is the same as Nisha, more of a meat hunter than a trophy hunter. I wonder if there's a reason that if you would see that pattern, if you did a study of female versus male hunters, I wonder if the females are more interested in having a full freezer, and the males are more interested in having that big, sexy buck head on the wall. I'd be interested to see what the percentages were. Wouldn't that be an interesting study? There's several reasons I don't talk about hunting much. Early on, I'm a family doctor, and then became very interested in nutrition when I became severely obese and pre-diabetic. I had to fix me. And in the process of that, I've kind of been stumbling around trying to figure out what a proper human diet is. And that took me into reading a lot in archaeology, anthropology, paleoanthropology, and also archaeobiology, anthrobiology, just a study of what we hunted 5,000, 10,000, 50,000 years ago. And so the majority of humans' time on this planet, we hunted what's called megafauna, which means an animal that's over 100 kilograms. And these animals were also typically very fatty. And so that's what we spent the majority of our time on this planet eating. Now, about 12,000 years ago, due to one or more catastrophes, and then also more and more anthropological research is showing that humans hunted many of these megafauna, these very fatty, large animals. We hunted them to extinction in many cases. But then there was some kind of cataclysm 12,000-ish years ago that was very hard on the elephants, the mammoths, the camels, the wild horses, and they just almost all died out. And so what we're left with, especially in Tennessee, is deer, wild turkey, rabbit, squirrel. That's basically what you're going to hunt in Tennessee. There's a little bit of wild boar down in the southern part of Tennessee, but mainly and so these animals are small and they're very, very lean, right? And so I'm sure Britton's heard of something called rabbit starvation, where if you're eating a very high protein diet, like trying to live on rabbits or live on venison, you can actually develop fatty acid deficiencies and get very sick from that. And so that's why most hunters, when they're cooking up, grilling up their kill, They always add fat to that. You wrap it in bacon, you cook it in bacon grease, you put some butter on top of it because you need that fat to be healthy. And so I don't talk about hunting a lot because we don't have the megafauna to hunt anymore. And then obviously it's frowned upon in other countries to shoot an elephant or, some of these other animals now. You basically will get canceled for that, even though that's what humans have been doing since we've been on this planet. And then the second reason I don't talk about it a lot, especially with if we talk more about preparedness, right? Being prepared in case something bad happens, in case the trucks stop running, in case the light switch stops working, is a story that Granny Berry told me when I was a little kid. So Granny Berry was born in 1930. And so she became 5-6 years old in the depths of the Great Depression, because it started in 29, but it went on for years, right? And a lot of people say that we didn't come out of the Great Depression until the next World War. That's what kind of brought us out of it. So she grew up in that time period in the woods of Tennessee. Now, back then, there was about 150 million people in America, 170, something like that. Now there's 350 million, right? And as we know from mainstream news stories, everybody's got a gun, especially in Tennessee and West Virginia and places like that. Everybody's got, you're weird if you just got one gun, right? And so she told me the story that during the Great Depression, first of all, they were poor farmers. And so they really couldn't even feel the Depression happen. They're like, nothing changed for us except for one thing. And that's what makes me hesitant to really bet my family's health and safety on hunting. Mm-hmm. She said that after a few years into the Great Depression, the woods were hunted out. Mm-hmm. And the rivers were fished out. And I'd never heard that term, fished out. I'm like, what does that mean? She's like, well, everybody was hungry. Everybody was starving. And so everybody was hunting. Everybody was fishing. And after a year or two of that, back when there was only 170 million of us, the woods were hunted out and the rivers and streams were fished out. And so now you can imagine if something bad ever does happen and everybody gets out their 270 or their 30-06 and they go and start hunting, or they get out their fishing pole and they start going out and fishing, we're going to fish out the streams very quickly. We're going to hunt out the woods. And then what do you do? And I'm not opposed to hunting at all. I'm a huge advocate for hunting. I think that it helps kids understand the circle of life. It helps them come to grips with death and come to grips with where our food comes from. I think it's vital. Every time Poppy kills a buck, he brings it over, and Beckett and Bonnie both get up in the truck and check it out and look at it. And they're both very aware that if you point a gun at something and pull the trigger, death happens. They get that. They understand that from a very young age. And so I think that builds in a very healthy respect for firearms and for bows and for crossbows and for all that stuff, which I think is mandatory to raise a balanced, intelligent adult human. They need to understand death. You don't need to protect them from that or hide them from that. And so they always go out and examine the turkey or the buck. But that I'm afraid that if in a catastrophe situation, if people's only plan is, I'll hunt and fish, that's only going to work for a year max. And then what are you going to do? And that's why definitely we hunt all the time, but we have plan B, which is we store meat in the pasture. And I really highly encourage everybody to do that because, number one, it's a more fatty meat. If you've got good, healthy soil and you got tons of grass and you're rotating the sheep or the goats or the cattle, they're going to have plenty of fat on them, which you need for health. And also, they are reliable because cows and sheep want nothing more. All they want to do is eat grass and make babies. That's literally their life. And they enjoy that. That's what they want to do. Same for the deer and the boar and the turkey in the wild. But I can control the sheep in my pasture, right? And also I'm controlling them not only with my fences, but also if it comes to it, I'll control them and protect them with my firearm as well. And so I think all these things marry perfectly. But I don't want anybody to have the false assumption that I can just hunt or fish and feed my family in a catastrophe situation, because that will not last for long.
Yeah. Well, and Britton, so, Dr. Berry was talking about like how his children are learning about death and where they're, where the food's coming from. So what are you guys doing for the next generation and for the young people? Because I know you've done things like to help get the word out, and you sponsored my nephew's archery team. So
Right.
what are you doing as, with MDE Outdoors to foster that?
So one of the things we started when we started this was our tagline was shoot straight and get your kids outdoors. Because you want your kids to be able to be, outdoors, not stuck in front of a TV all the time, playing video games, down the street with the gang, doing this, doing that, drugs, alcohol. You want to keep them kind of focused, on, things that are going to like help them later on in life, things that are going to help them grow as as an individual. Now, do I let my kids play video games? 100%. I don't mind it. Do I let them watch TV? 100%. I play video games with them. I watch TV with them, but also encourage them to get outside. And even if getting outside is going out and playing baseball, shoot straight, get your kids outdoors. It doesn't just mean, going hunting or going fishing. Just get outside, get outside and enjoy what we have around us. There's a whole vast bunch of stuff out there that you can learn about, bugs, critters. I mean, there's all kinds of things. And my kids, the two older girls, both of them have hunted. Both of them have killed deer. They've also missed a couple. The oldest boy, Ian, he's killed a couple deer, but with school and everything, it's kind of hard to get him out. And when I ask him if he wants to go, he doesn't really want to go. And I'm not going to push it on him. The youngest daughter, Taylor, she wants to go. So we got to start teaching her how to shoot and all of those things. She kind of gets the idea of it, but we haven't really honed her in on it. She hasn't showed a whole lot of interest in it until recently. So we're going to work with her. And Chance, the youngest one, is like, if Papaw's going, I'm going. It's Chance, you want to go hunt with Daddy? Nope. You want to go hunt with Papaw? Yep. So I'm like, whatever. So he's gone out and spent plenty of time with Papaw. He actually went with his mom this past year during black powder season, and she killed a deer, and he tracked it, took her right to it, and helped her. I think he may have actually helped her drag it out, but didn't want anything to do with field dressing and all that stuff. But I don't push it on them. I encourage them to go. I ask them if they want to go. I'd like for them to go, but I'm not going to force it on them, because I found out it's kind of one of those things. You force someone into doing something, they're really not going to like it, and they're not going to enjoy it. So I always ask if they want to go, great. If they don't want to go, I'm not going to make a big stink over it. And as far as, going to these outdoor shows that we go to, like Dixie Deer Classic and Western Virginia Sports Show, which we're going to be at this coming next weekend. We've given away, hunting trips with outfitters, fishing trips. We sent one girl to Africa on an African safari. Unfortunately, it was the year that COVID hit, so I don't think she's actually gone yet. But we gave away African safari, fishing trips, hunting trips, and we just encourage parents, hey, get your kids outside, just get them outdoors. It doesn't necessarily have to be hunting; just get them outside.
Speaking of COVID, you had told me that because of COVID, there was an increased interest in getting people outdoors and hunting.
Yeah, COVID really. I guess it was kind of a blessing and a curse all at the same time. It was bad because it took a lot of people out. It had a lot of effect on hospitals. I work at the hospital in CAT scan. My wife's a nurse, and we saw a ton of people with COVID, and it was nasty. As many people say, "Oh, it's not a real thing. Oh, it's that." It was as real as it could be. And if you saw some of the things we saw in the hospital, like, you'd have a better appreciation for it, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
But during that time, you saw a lot of people like learning how to grow things in their backyard, learning how to fish, learning how to hunt. And it was great to see so many people, putting forth that effort to be like, hey, I can't get my meat here because the trucks aren't running. Now what do I do? Well, I need to go fishing, or I need to go hunting, or I need to learn to grow my veggies in the back, in my backyard or in my, raised beds. And it was awesome to see that.
Yeah, Dr. Berry, did you see in the regenerative farming community, did you see an uptick also in like people becoming more interested in like homesteading and farming and things of that nature?
Yeah, definitely. But and I think there's a variety of reasons for that. One, everybody was bored to death because you couldn't go anywhere, right? And so I think a lot of people thought, well, I've got those, those vegetable seeds I've had for a few years. I'm going to try to get out and make a garden, which I think is great. Then other people, when the trucks didn't run as regularly, right? All of a sudden there were big empty places in the supermarket. I think that made a lot of people uncomfortable and made them think a little further than the end of their nose, as my granddaddy would say. And they're like, so any kind of big event like this, the trucks could stop running for a few days or even a few weeks, a few months. What am I going to do? What's my family going to do if that happens? And so I think a lot of people are like, I've been meaning to get some chickens. I think I'm going to go ahead and get those. I've been meaning to plant a garden. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And so, yeah, I think that there's been a huge wake-up call for a lot of people to get back involved with actually growing food or raising food, which I think is a wonderful thing. It's unfortunate that we had to have a pandemic to basically slap people around a little bit and make them realize, okay, so that's important. I had forgotten that, but this reminded me. So now I'm going to take advantage of this downtime and get outside and raise my own food, grow my own food. So yeah, definitely. And I think it's overall, that's a good thing that a lot of people reacted in that way. Of course, a lot of people also got very involved in other things that don't help anything, but I mean, that's just the difference in people.
Yeah. So Britton, if somebody wants to, let's say that they're interested in hunting, they've never been hunting, they're from, I don't know, some uppity city, and they've never thought that they'd ever want to hunt, and now they want to go hunt. What is your advice? Like, how do they get involved? Is there organizations they should go to? Like, do you recommend bow hunting? Do you recommend gun hunting? What do you recommend?
Start small. Like baby steps. You have to crawl before you walk. You got to walk before you run. You can't just wake up and just take off running. And I started out when I was 5 years. First time I ever went hunting, I was 5 years old, squirrel hunting. Dad took me out. It was October 5th, his birthday. We went to Lewis County, West Virginia. It was colder than blue blazes out there. And the only thing I remember about that day was falling down and smashing my hand on a rock, smashing my finger in between a BB gun and a rock. Now, I didn't want to go back hunting ever again, but I did. And it was squirrel hunting at first, and then I graduated to deer hunting, and then graduated to turkey hunting, and then I got a bow, and then I went bow hunting, and then, I got my own, I got my own rifle, and then I could, reach out and shoot a deer at 150 yards. But you have to start small. You've got to hone your hunting skills. You got to learn how to shoot. Mm-hmm. You got to take all the hunter safety classes. You've got to learn all that. I mean, that's basics. You have to know what you're shooting at, what's behind what you're shooting at, what to do once you shot said critter, and then graduate from that. Start small. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, and Dr. Berry, what about you for regenerative farming? Like, if people are interested, because I know that you're very active in like some of the local regenerative organizations.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to talk a little bit about something Britton said. I went out with my father, and it was squirrel hunting and rabbit hunting when I was probably 5, 6, 7 years of age. And then I can remember taking my grandfather's .22 rifle out when I was 10, 11, 12, and would go rabbit hunting with a .22. Yes, 22 longs. Because in my family, if you're not a Deadeye, there's something wrong with you. And so my dad and I used to have shooting competitions with a .22 long, and our groupings would literally be a half inch at 50 yards. all day long. Like you would just get razzed unmercifully if you couldn't group like that. And so I would hunt squirrel and rabbit with a 22. And but Britton said something very important: shooting, looking at what you're shooting at, but looking what's behind what you're shooting at. And I think all of us have seen. There was some recent police body cam footage of a policeman shooting at something he shouldn't have even been shooting at to start with. But literally, there was an entire neighborhood of apartments behind the target. And the country boy in me was going, what are you doing? Never would I pull that trigger with literally people's houses directly behind the target. And that's one of those common sense lessons that you learn, and it just becomes unconscious. You don't even think about that if you grow up hunting. And so that I love what Britton's doing, getting as many kids out in the woods as possible. If they want to go hunting, yes, let's go hunting. Let's target practice, because you learn those kinds of lessons and you don't even have to think about that stuff anymore. But I'm a huge proponent of hunting. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me. I just don't want that to be your only plan in case if things go wrong. But I'm a huge advocate of know your local hunters, because, like, for example, a lot of Nisha's dad's friends, when they hunt, they're deer hunting, they bring us the heart and the liver. And they and so for years that was wasted, that because they would leave that behind, right? They'd get the back strap or whatever, and that was it. Now they all take an extra Ziploc for Dr. Berry, because they know I want whether it's a turkey or a deer, I want the heart and liver. And so not only are we now actually, there's more food coming out of the woods because those things are not being left to the coyotes anymore, but also it's an awareness to them, like, I never thought about eating the heart. I think I'm going to try that. Good. I want you to try that, right? Saute that heart and slice it up and saute it in some butter and bacon grease and see what you think, because they're going to love that. And now there's an extra source of nutrition that would have been wasted in the past. But the regenerative ranching, yes, grow up, have a garden, start a garden, practice with that, because just like hunting, you can't start off like, hey, I'm going to farm 40 acres with my hand, my tiller. No, you're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. But you got to start small and you got to practice. There's a practice of gardening, a practice of hunting. There's a practice of ranching. And so for a lot of people, they're like, 60 sheep, dang, I don't know. That sounds like a lot of work. Yeah, it is. I wouldn't recommend you start with that. If you've got 2 acres to 10 acres, just get a couple of St. Croix sheep. You don't have to shear them. You don't have to dock their tails. You don't have to do anything with their ears. If you're feeding them right, you don't even really have to worm them or anything. You just let them go out there, eat grass, make meat, and make babies. That's what they do. And so for people on smaller plots of land, just get some backyard chickens. You don't have to have a rooster for your hens to lay eggs. I always have to say that, because some people think they've got to have a rooster and their HOA won't let them have a rooster. You don't have to have a rooster. Hens will lay eggs without a rooster. And then even if you're in a high-rise apartment, you can have some quail in a spare closet. Okay. And they're very clean. If you change their stuff, there's no smell. They're very quiet. And so you literally can have quail eggs if you're in a high-rise apartment. Just don't tell anybody, right? And don't have to, but you literally can have them in a closet in your high-rise apartment in New York City if you've got an extra closet. I don't know if you do or not, but do you know what I'm saying? I think everybody needs to be thinking about and trying to take control of a bigger percentage of their food. Where does your food come from? Who harvested this? How was the animal treated? If it's a deer in the wild, then all you need to know is the hunter, because the deer's managing their own food, right? And so I'm a huge advocate of hunting. I'm a huge advocate of regenerative ranching and farming. I want everybody to know where food comes from. I don't want their answer to be, well, the supermarket. No, that's not an acceptable answer of where your food comes from. And so I think all the work you guys are doing in all the different spheres, I think it's going to have a cumulative effect. I think it's going to have a synergistic effect. I think hunting and ranching go literally hand in hand, because after you shoot the critter, Britton, what you got to do? You got to process the critter. Well, same thing goes on a ranch. If you harvest an animal, you better know how to break that animal up into usable hunks of nutrition, and you're going to learn that sooner or later if you're on a ranch or a small homestead farm. So I think all that stuff is important. It's invaluable, and I think we need to get all the kids involved in that. And I agree with Britton. I don't think you need to force it on them, although in the past that's exactly how it was done. That's exactly how it was done. They gave you a hatchet and said, go get a chicken for dinner. And it didn't matter if you were emotionally ready for that or not. That's what you did, or you would get the switch or the belt or the razor strap. And so I agree that in today's society, you should wait till they're ready, and you should let them emotionally mature until they're ready to do that, while keeping in mind that that's not always how it's been.
Yeah.
You know, can I add one thing you said there, Dr. Berry?
Sure.
So you were talking about knowing where your food comes from, people, farming, not farming, whatever. If you don't have the ability to farm, if it's something that doesn't interest you for time constraints or whatever reason it may be, if you prefer to buy your meat from somewhere,
Yep.
Look at your local farm co-ops. Like, look at your local farm that sell, chickens or sell beef or sell pork. My wife bought into raw milk. I think it's raw milk. Yeah, it's raw milk. I think it is unpasteurized, but however you want to call it. Don't want to sound ignorant, but that's okay. We get it this little farm up the road. It comes from another farm locally. They deliver it there. We go pick it up. We bought a 180-pound hog from somebody right during deer season. Lovely. Had to go buy a new freezer. Tell you how that went over. But if you can't farm, or you don't have the ability to, or you're afraid to, or it's just excuse me, out of your time constraints, just go to your local people. Buy local, because I guarantee you that animal is going to be taken better care of and done right than some Tyson chicken plant somewhere.
Absolutely.
I mean, let's be honest about it.
Yeah. And I remember, Dr. Berry, you were talking about another video recently. It was like, it's important for community. And it was one of your open farms videos talking about knowing your community, because you might be saving somebody's life, or they may be saving yours.
Absolutely. If you are not on a first name basis with your next door neighbor, then your next door neighbor is a stranger. Mm-hmm. And in a bad situation, that's not safe. That's not resilient. Everybody needs to know their next door neighbor. You need to know them on a first name basis. You need to know when their birthday is. You need to know what kind of meat they like. You need to be like, every time we harvest, we take a little cut of meat to all the next door neighbors. And some of them are like, well, I've never had lamb before. I don't even know how to cook it. So then there's a conversation. And we're building that community, building those bonds, because in a disaster situation, you want your next door neighbor to consider you part of their extended family. That's very resilient. Some people would say even anti-fragile. You want the hunters to know, hey, if you get a wild boar or you get a squirrel, my granny, I grew up eating squirrel and gravy. If you see a squirrel, would you get me one? And then you're going to pay that hunter back, right? With however you can, whether that's barter or whether that's money. But absolutely, everybody needs to know their local ranchers. They need, if you still eat vegetables, you need to know your local farmers who are doing it the regenerative way, the organic way, the non-GMO way. You need to be friends with these people, not just have their number saved. You need to reach out to them and form connections, because you want to be considered extended family. All your neighbors. We recently had our water was frozen for a week here, and our little next door neighbor called me, and she said, hey, my water's still running. If you guys need water, just come over here and we'll figure something out. Do you see if we didn't know any neighbors and we didn't have any other resources, your water being out for a week, that's a big damn deal. Right? But luckily we had 2 weeks of water saved here. And then also we know all our neighbors, and any of our neighbors would have been happy to let us come get water or to bring us water if we needed that. that community, that first step outside of your home, that layer of community is huge. In case something bad ever happens, you need to be those people's extended family, not just some stranger who they've never said hi to. You just see them as they walk in and out of their door.
Exactly. So, a couple just fun questions to kind of wrap everything up. So, Britton, I'm wearing your shirt.
Yeah, and I'm wearing the same one. Imagine that. How did that
I've been
happen?
wearing one too, but nobody sent me one.
Well, we're going to remedy that,
We're
Dr.
gonna
Barry.
fix that.
We're going to fix it.
All
So,
right.
I want you to talk about the logo.
Talk about the logo.
Yes.
So the buck duck fish. I mean, it kind of encompasses everything outdoors. We needed a logo for the show, for the brand or whatever, and I had an idea. I put it down on paper. My buddy Eric, who worked with me in the beginning, he kind of did some graphic stuff, and he took what I put on paper and then put it together into what you have right in front of you. So you have a fish hook, you have a duck head, and then you got, the antlers is basically wings. And we really didn't have a name for it. And about 2 years ago, a friend of ours from Kentucky, he's like, it's the buck duck fish. I was like, all right, it's stuck. So that's the buck duck fish. And like I said, it kind of encompasses everything. So it's kind of one of those things. If it runs, flies, or swims, chase it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Do I waterfowl hunt? I've went to Moultrie, Georgia, fell in a swamp, had pneumonia, killed 3 ducks. It was a miserable, fun experience. A couple of us do waterfowl hunt, but we turkey hunt, we deer hunt, some of us bear hunt, some of us rabbit hunt, and we have fun. But it just kind of encompasses everything. Like I said, if it runs, flies, or swims, chase it.
Exactly. So last question and this is for both of you guys, your advice to people who want to start right now doing what you do. So Britton, if somebody wants to go hunt right now, what is their first step? Who do they go see to just do the first step?
First step, take your hunter safety course test. Mm-hmm. That's the very first step. You have to start there with knowing what to do. I mean, I know back in whenever it was, nobody had a hunter safety course test. Wild West, everybody just went out and hunted. But there was also people had a whole lot more common sense back in. I mean,
common sense is common anyway.
I mean, let's be honest.
Yep.
Would I trust one of these new generation people to go out in the woods with a gun and know what in the world they'd end up either hurting themselves or hurting somebody else, or coming home and needing a safe space because they didn't know what they were doing. But I mean, and I'm not trying to be mean about it, but it's the truth. Like, I wouldn't trust the newer generation of people, new generation of kids, or even some of the adults to go out and know what to do. Go take a hunter safety course test. Learn what you're supposed to do. Get with someone that does hunt, that knows how to hunt, that has experience. Talk to them. Absorb as much information from that person as you can. I'm 44 years old, and I'm still learning. I mean, my dad took me out. Most everything I have learned about hunting and fishing, I learned from him. And I'm still learning from him.
Yeah, I know that here in North Carolina, there's actually a co-op program where you can sign up, and it's like experienced hunters sign up to be mentors to new hunters. So that's something that we're looking into to get my husband hunting.
That'd be good. I mean, if I was near and around, I'd be more than happy to help. You know that.
I'm about to send him up to you.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Barry, what is your advice for someone who wants to literally start with regenerative farming?
So my advice is not to let your eyes be bigger than your ranch. You can literally develop a PhD level of knowledge about any subject you want through YouTube. Okay. Literally, if you're interested in quail or chickens or turkey or sheep or cattle, there are thousands of hours of videos from very successful ranchers who started very small, and now they've got a bigger operation, if that's what you're interested in. But I started out a year before I got sheep, and we were still stuck in Nashville in the suburbs. I started watching Greg Judy videos, and he's in Missouri, and he started out with just a tiny little farm, and now he leases farms, got a huge flock. He also has cattle. He also has goats. And I just started watching his videos because I was very interested. I bought a few books. Now I'm ashamed to tell you how many hundreds of books about farming and ranching I've got over here to my right. But start learning. And if part of how you're going to put food on your table is hunting, definitely hunter safety. Please do that. There are so many people in the world today. The only thing they know about firearms is that you're supposed to hold them like this. Well, no, that's not right. Right. So you absolutely need to start watching videos, reading books, find a local rancher who will let you work for free. Yes, I said work for free on the ranch, especially people, if you're like, dude, I'm broke as a joke. I don't got no property and definitely can't afford to buy even one sheep. Good. Find a local rancher who's got cattle or sheep or whatever, and call them up and say, hey, I want to learn about this. I'd love to come work on your farm a few days a week. Bet you they can find something for you to do. And you need to not be too big for your britches. You need to do what they need you to do. But after you've proven yourself, guess what they're going to do? They're going to take you under their wing, and they're going to teach you everything that they've learned. Most importantly, they're going to teach you what not to do, which is also very important in the hunting woods as well, is to teach you all the mistakes they made and how not to make those mistakes. Learn, be hungry for that knowledge. Look, and literally, you could become a world-class rancher watching YouTube videos, and then go out and start putting what you think you've learned into practice. Because in the real world, just like in the woods, it'll quickly reveal itself if you've learned something that's inappropriate from a YouTube video. But become hungry for this knowledge. Realize how important it is to be the one putting the food on your family's table. And then start learning, start researching, start reaching out to local people who are already doing what it is you think you want to do, and start asking questions, because nobody out there is going to turn you off from that. They're going to be like, oh yeah, come on over. I'll show you how I do it. There you go. And their example might be something that you want to do, or it might be a great example of what not to do. But either way, you're going to learn something from that experience.
And don't be afraid to fail.
Yes.
I mean, you don't know how many times I have failed hunting, whether it be spooking a deer walking in, or missing a deer because my heart was thumping so hard I punched the button on my release too early, or making the wrong call when a big old gobbler's walking in full strut. Like, don't be afraid to fail. You can learn so much from failing. And I have personally, both gardening and if my wife were here, she would tell you too. She tries to be as organic as she can with growing the garden and everything. And it may not always work, but you learn from mistakes. You learn from failing, and I've learned so much from failing, whether it's life in general, marriage, hunting, fishing, gardening, it's just in general. You learn from your mistakes, you learn from failing. So hunting and fishing and gardening and everything will humble you. You just have to be able to learn from it. And if you're not humble, don't do it.
I think
I mean seriously, if you can't humble yourself, if you're like, well, I've got this, this is a piece of cake and this is easy, and you go out and you fail and that doesn't humble you, quit, because it's not going to work. You have to learn to fail, and then failing will definitely. I have been humbled so many times in the woods. Oh
yeah. Well, I was going to say, Dr. Berry's new video for OB Farms, he was talking about praying for him because it's nothing but brambles.
This big around. Yeah. If you were to run through there, you would probably cut an artery. You'd have to have surgery to fix yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of those thorns, I was like, dang.
Yep. They're no joke at all. And I love everything Britton just said. I might rephrase. I might say that if you're not humble, that's all the more reason you need to get in the woods or get in the pasture, because you probably need to be humble. And nothing will humble you quicker than getting out in the woods and trying to harvest something, or getting in the pasture and trying to raise animals. They will reveal your weaknesses as quickly, if not quicker, than anything else will. And then you'll immediately see just how steep your learning curve is, and how steep it needs to be, because a lot of us have got a lot of relearning to do, just like with a proper human diet. We all think we know, but then when you actually have to put what you think you know into practice, we wind up with a lot of chronic disease. And so I think that same lesson applies on the ranch, on the farm, and in the woods. You might think you know, but you don't know you know until you've brought something home and cooked it up for dinner. Then you can it'll humble you, but then you can also be proud of what you've done, because you have done something that our ancestors have been doing since we've been on this planet, which is feeding our family.
Yes.
That's the most important, and that's super important.
So what's your favorite, both of y'all, what's your favorite part of the deer to eat?
Go ahead, Dr. Barry, you first.
Oh, the favorite part for me. Now, I'll tell you, Pedro can cook up some mean backstrap, but I love the heart sauteed in butter and some garlic. And then also venison liver to me is, I enjoy eating venison liver. Beef liver, I can eat it, but it's not my favorite. But venison liver, just cut in strips and don't overcook it. Just lightly sauteed in bacon grease with a little bit of garlic. Man, that is good. And then obviously any part of a rabbit or a squirrel, that's what I grew up on. Love any of that.
And you, Britton?
Right. So for me, deer heart tacos. Deer heart. The kids, if I shoot a deer, they're wanting deer heart tacos, and I'll make them all day long. We take the liver and we make dog treats out of the liver, and the dogs absolutely love it. I haven't tried deer liver, haven't been brave enough to try it yet. Something I want to try, but I don't know. But deer heart, as long as I don't, blow it up with a bullet, I'm cooking the deer heart all day long.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing that we do too is we save the shanks and make stock out of it.
Perfect.
I'll tell you a funny story. I'm not ashamed of it one bit. I'll tell you a funny story. If we got a minute. You got a second, Becca? Dr. Barry, you'll chuckle at this. So about 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago, a deer met its unfortunate demise in front of my house. Somebody hit it full on head. I mean, message goes out on Facebook, hey, I just hit a deer. I hit it in the head. There's nothing wrong with it. It died instantly. Somebody, I don't have time to get it. Somebody get it. I'm like, on it. Dad and I drug it out of the road, skinned it out, checked it, made sure everything was good. Turned out pretty good. Tasted great. Made some of it into stock, made some of it into jerky, and ate the rest of it. And it's legal. We do have a tag for it. We had to call the Department of Wildlife Resources, got a tag for it. Everything's straight and legit. So, yeah, there was a roadkill deer in the fridge. And when I told the kids about it, they were eating it one night. I said, that's roadkill. And they went, what? They were like, are you serious? I said, it got hit in the head. Come on, y'all.
Well, West Virginia has roadkill laws now.
Absolutely. We've changed here in Virginia a little bit, but we called, made a phone call, got it lined out, good to go.
Perfect.
That's
kind of weird. Everybody's like, oh my Lord, you had roadkill. Like, yeah, there was nothing wrong with it. The thing got hit in the head.
That's a waste of meat. To me, it's a waste of meat if you leave it. If it's usable.
Absolutely.
I cut the back strap up, cut as much off of the ham as I could, trimmed it up. Everything else went in a stock pot and made stock out of it.
Perfect.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you guys being on here. Last thing is tell people where they can find you. So, Britton, you want to go first?
Sure. You can go Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. It's all going to be under MDE Outdoors. Go to our website, www.mdeoutdoors.com. There's links to social media there. There's links to where we air. There's also a link to the Buck Duck Fish logo wear. Just click the link to the Buck Duck Fish logo wear, hit shop all, and it'll take you to everything we got. And we're getting ready to drop some new stuff. We got new hats, shirts coming out here next Friday, so be on the lookout for that.
All right. And Dr. Barry, and a lot of people probably know where you are, but tell them anyway.
So I've got a little YouTube channel. If you're interested in health and nutrition and medicine, that you can check out, just search for Dr. Barry, and it should be the #1 thing that pops up. If I'm feeling especially helpful, you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. If I'm feeling especially snarky, you can find me over on Twitter. And
well, it's
then,
not Twitter, it's X, ain't it?
Yeah, X. Yeah, I have trouble calling it X. But also, I got a book called Lies My Doctor Told Me that's available in all bookstores. Also, a book called Kicking Ass After 50, and also a book called Common Sense Labs. And all those are available on Amazon or in other bookstores. And I appreciate this opportunity, Rebekah. I think you're doing great work. You too as well, Britton. It's a pleasure hanging out with you.
Yeah,
Thanks, Rebekah. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, y'all.
All right, y'all have a good one. Take care.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Everybody, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.